Hi everyone and welcome to We Are Sunderland with myself, Scott Wilson and Dom Shaw, both of the Northern Echo. Both are yet to chat through all things Sunderland in the next, half hour or so. We'll have a quick look back at Old Trafford and kind of what happened there. But I think more of it will be, obviously, with the international break, giving us a chance to take stock of the start of the season so far. How's it all gone? The big positives, there's obviously been plenty of them. The worries, the concerns, if there are a few of them, and kind of where we think Sunderland are at. Quick thank you before we get going to our sponsors, as ever. That's the Fans Museum and Cospex Opticians. If you're watching this on YouTube, then please like, subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you're listening on the various podcast platforms that we're on, then rate and review. Right, Old Trafford, you were there, Dom, in the Mancunian rain. I mean, we both said pre-game that we felt it was a real opportunity for Sunderland. At various stages of the game, it probably was, but in reality, that was a fair result, wasn't it? I don't think even the kind of yes, there's the penalty appeals. We'll get onto all of that, but a fair result.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sunderland will come away disappointed. That my feeling coming away from Old Trafford on Saturday was Sunderland have let Man United off the hook there.
Yeah.
For all the reasons we talked about, and actually after the pod we recorded last week, reports emerged at the very end of last week suggesting that Amorim was potentially going to lose his job had Sunderland won. So there was the pressure there. There was the goalkeeper Lemons handed his debut, 23-year-old, against the backdrop of everything that's surrounded Manchester United goalkeepers over the course of the last couple of years. So there was the undoubted nervousness there, and the fact that this is clearly a team whose confidence is very, very fragile at the minute. And I just thought if Sunderland get the first goal, there was every chance Old Trafford could have gone under. Yeah. I was staggered by how bad the atmosphere was at Old Trafford. It felt so flat, even when they were 2-0 up. So what would it have been like had Sunderland got themselves in front? And they had the chance, the early Traore chance. I know the flag goes up, but that was close. There'd have been a VAR check on that. After that, it wasn't until the 44th minute when Jhaka gets his shot away on the edge of the box that they actually test the goalkeeper. Second half was a bit of a non-event, really. Sunderland improved. I just think you come away thinking, I think the first half was Sunderland's worst half of the season so far. And it came at a time when there was a real opportunity.
And so on that first half then, was it just the players underperforming, which, let's be honest, we all know, does happen, can happen? Or was it, given that obviously Lebris felt compelled to make the early substitution and really change things around, without take it as granted that we all know how fantastic Regis Lebris has been for Sunderland and how much credit he's got in the bank. But was that a rare occasion of him maybe getting it wrong in that first half hour, 40 minutes?
I was surprised at the two changes on the flanks, really. Or certainly dropping Talby. I don't think Talby I've probably been least impressed with of most of the signings, or of the signings who've played most football. I'm not including Brobby and Traore.
Yeah.
The signings who've been in week in, week out, I've probably been least impressed with Talby. But I think he's been getting better by the week. And I don't mean that as critical, because he is a young player, relatively inexperienced still in the whole scheme of things. I know he's played a lot of football for his age, but he's a young player who's coming into the Premier League for the first time. And I think the type of player he is as well, you always accepted that probably a bit more time was going to be needed with Talbot. So I was slightly surprised at that. We know Lebris has said previously how much he likes Le Fay playing in a central role. So it wasn't really a surprise to see Le Fay coming there, but I thought he had a really poor game. Le Fay, he was quiet. He was a passenger really in the first half. It was defensively, Masuaku had a torrid time at left back, but I don't think you can blame Lebris for blaming Masuaku, because he was part of a defence that kept a brilliant clean sheet of Forest 7 days earlier. What will be interesting moving forward is Ballard was class when he came on, and Sunderland significantly improved when they went to 3 at the back. Now it's horses for courses, isn't it? And that is a shape, a formation, a system that we haven't seen Lebris play a lot of. I just wonder how long you can keep Dan Ballard out of that team. But he's not going to split Mukwele and Alderete up. You wouldn't think at the minute. I'd be hugely surprised if he did. One more game still for Reinildo. It'll be interesting to see what he does for that first game back. It just felt like one of those games where I almost think you kind of fall in the trap of maybe don't overanalyze it. It was just an off day. It was just an off half, an off 40 minutes. But you go 2-0 down at Man United, you're up against it. And yet, even then at half time, I was saying to the lads in the press room, Sunderland score here. Sunderland score before 65, 70 minutes here. This place could get so nervy. But it never felt on the cards.
It's an interesting one about that defense because we speculated and we threw it around in the vid before the game about who might play there. It does make you wonder post international break for that game when Ronaldo's still out, whether you might see Hume switch flanks, Ballard at centre half with probably Alderete and maybe Mukiele moves to right back. Yeah, because I'm with you. I for all that we've raved about Alderete and we've raved about Mukiele, that probably just reinforces, actually, don't underestimate how important Ballard still is going to be to this defence, like you touched on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get why he hasn't done that, because Mukwele and Alderete have been so good, haven't they, as a pairing? So why split that up? And by doing that, you're moving one of those. You're moving Hume from right to left back. You're reshaping your entire defence, really. What I think would be interesting, though, is whether he goes to a 3. But Wolves at home is an entirely different game to Man United away, isn't it? Agreed. I mean, how much pressure is there on Wolves in that game? Still winless after Sunday. I know we'll hold that until next week, but that feels like a huge game. I think it's easy. Like when you're a promoted team and you've had the start Sunderland have had, which I know we'll get to and discuss at length. I think it's easy to go to Man United, lose, and say, oh, bit of a reality check. But I actually don't think it was. I think you're coming away. I think it's a compliment to Sunderland that you're coming away thinking that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, we've let one get away there.
That isn't a reality check because they haven't been played off the park for 90 minutes. It hasn't been kind of this. There were in stages in the first half, but it hasn't been this humbling defeat where you come away thinking, oh my, we've seen the levels there. Maybe we've just got a bit too giddy and ahead of ourselves. I don't think it was one of those at all. I don't think Sunderland are going to finish in the top 6 or 8 this season. But equally, I don't think you come away from that concerned. But I think similar to Burnley, you come away thinking it's just a reminder that you can't let too many opportunities slip in the Premier League.
Either of them a penalty? I didn't really think so. I've got to admit. The first one's definitely not.
I've got to be honest. I didn't think the second one was at the time or when I watched the replay. But then chatting to people afterwards, others seemed convinced there was. And I haven't seen a whole load of replays from various angles back since. I've got to admit. I don't think either. Were. I mean, the first certainly wasn't, was it?
No. I mean, the first definitely isn't. And I'm like you. I've seen it a few. I still don't think there's really enough in the second one for that to be changed. Anyway,
just one thing. I thought Granit Xhaka was class.
Yeah,
and like even when you're 2-0 down in a game like that, and you're getting the runaround for maybe 15, 20 minutes in the first half. Just the way he patrols the pitch. And also, what he reminded me, and I know this isn't probably the first time anyone's thought this watching, it's like having a manager on the pitch.
Yeah.
Someone's so experienced, and the fact like he is constantly on at everyone, not in a critical way, not having a go at his teammates, but just directing them constantly. And Lebris had talked about the quarter going online first thing on Northern Echo, and we are Sunderland first thing Wednesday morning. Lebris had talked about Jhaka in his press conference last week, and it was interesting to say that he knew when they signed him that it was going to be a mega signing, but he's actually exceeded even Labrisse's expectations, because it was only when they got him in and watched him operate on a day-to-day basis. And that's not just how good he is on the pitch, is it? It's his whole professionalism, isn't it? It's everything around him.
And the fact he's so willingly bought into it all, that he's embraced the role that he's been kind of given at Sunderland, that leadership role, like you say, on and off the pitch, that standard setter. He's absolutely relishing that. And it's massive for Sunderland. And I think, of all the yes, the final result of the weekend was different. But if you're a Sunderland fan who's been to Burton and been to Cheltenham and been to Shrewsbury, and you're sat watching Granit Xhaka run the midfield at Old Trafford in a Sunderland shirt, I mean, that is quite something, isn't it?
Well, and I was watching the game thinking, like, Man United could do a Granit Xhaka. You'd have Xhaka over Casemiro in the midfield now,
all day long.
But not just what he offered, but just that steel, a real leader, someone who won't take any nonsense, which is what clearly Man United from the outside looking in look to have been missing.
Yeah.
Like, these are really, really early days. But do you think he has the makings of becoming one of Sunderland's best ever players?
I think he's got the makings of becoming a kind of club legend, and I don't throw that phrase around lightly. Now, he's of a certain age, so he's not going to spend the next 10 years almost certainly in the Sunderland midfield, is he? But he's not 38. He's still got plenty of football left in him, and I think if he does what he's doing for 2 or 3 seasons and enables Sunderland to properly re-establish themselves in the Premier League, kick on, get in the top half, maybe challenge for you, all that kind of stuff, and is playing at the levels that he's playing at, but he's having the influence that he's having, then I think straight away he becomes one of Sunderland's best ever signings. And also, like I say, I think because it's Granit Xhaka playing for Sunderland and it's still a bit of a wow thing, I think he will quite quickly become a real fan's favorite. I mean, he's getting there now, isn't he? Let's be brutally honest, but I think he will quite quickly achieve, legendary kind of status at the club if he continues the way that he's going.
Just one more thing on Man U. I thought Mayenda looked bright from the bench, which gives Labrise something to think about. Brobby came on as well. And we asked Labrise about Brobby afterwards, and he said, clearly still getting the grips. There's a lot more to come for him. We haven't seen an awful lot of him. But I thought Mayenda looked bright and gave Labrise something to think about in the break. So second break of the season, we are 7 games in. Sunderland are 9th with 11 points. What have you made of Sunderland's start on the whole? But I think more pressingly, what's a good season for Sunderland now? Do you still take 17th now?
Yes, I think you do. I think you do at the minute. I mean, and that sounds defeatist, doesn't it? Because we've been energized and excited. So what's Sunderland's start being like? Sunderland's start's been brilliant. There's absolutely no getting away from that. I mean, let's be honest. Before a ball was kicked, if you'd said that going into the second international break of the season, Sunderland would have 3 points, not have won a game, scratched a couple of draws, but had 2 or 3 pretty heavy defeats, then clearly that would have been massively, massively disappointing. But I don't think anyone would have felt that that was an utterly outlandish statement, because prior to the start of this season, that is what promoted teams rather were doing, isn't it? That for the last 2 years. I mean, last year, it took October, November before promoted teams were getting the first win on the board. So, had Sunderland been going into this break sitting 17th or 18th with maybe 6 points, you would have said that's okay. That's not disastrous. They've exceeded that so much that I guess to go back to your first question, yes, you are starting to recalibrate what's possible and all your ambitions and stuff. Now, does that mean that all of a sudden Sunderland are going to finish in the top 6? I still don't think it does, no. Does it mean that Sunderland could finish 10th and never really be at serious risk of relegation all season? Yes, I think that is a realistic ambition now for Sunderland, given everything they've shown, given what we know about a lot of the other teams in the league now. I don't think it's I don't think it's unrealistic now to think that Sunderland could have a season where they'd never really flirt with the bottom three, and that would be absolutely brilliant. Having said that, we've still got the Africa Cup of Nations to come. We've still got potentially injuries to key players to come. There's bound to be a bit of a loss of form. Other teams down there will potentially change manager, improve, whatever. So as we're sitting here now, I still think if Sunderland finish 17th, survive, have more to build on next season, get more money to invest, I still think that is a more than acceptable season. That, it might end up that if Sunderland finish 17th, there's a tinge of disappointment there because it probably will mean they underperform a bit in the second half of the season and drop off from where they are now. That's still not a disaster as long as they survive. But, can Sunderland have a much better season than that? Yeah, definitely they can.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of them where it's a success because of what it means going forward. It's a success because, like you said there, you bank an awful lot more money. You strengthen the squad significantly again next summer. You're in a position with a year of Premier League experience under your belt, so you go into second season in a stronger place. I think you take it now. But like you say, I think you take it with a tinge of disappointment because what we've seen in the first weeks of the season suggests that Sunderland are capable of more. I could see, you say 10th. My worry there is I think there's so many teams in that cluster like Villa, Brighton, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
Are any of them realistically going to finish in the top four? But then are any of them realistically going to finish in the bottom half? But then I think on the evidence of the early weeks of the season, Sunderland are better than the two promoted teams. They're better than West Ham. They're better than Wolves. They're better than Brentford. It's not hard. Whereas, I know we keep going back to this, we drove away from that playoff final saying, as great as this is, who are the three teams who are going down if Sunderland's staying up? Well, now, it's not hard to find 5, 6, 7 teams, is it?
There's been two big things this season that we've learned so far this season. One is that Sunderland are significantly better than the doom and gloom predictions and scenarios. And two, as you rightly say, there's a number of other teams in the league who look significantly worse than they might have been. So put both of them things together and you've got the recipe for, what should hopefully be a really successful season.
And the only other thing, and I don't want to mention this every pod for the next 2 or 3 weeks, that run in December and January, that is going to be telling, I think, both in terms of how Sunderland handle it, but then also if it doesn't go to plan, what sort of knock-on effect it has. But then what a position Sunderland might find themselves going into that run. Imagine you flip that, and if Sunderland have a rough start and go into that run in the bottom three, and what a daunting spell that suddenly becomes.
We'll go through
in the early weeks of the season is a few weeks ago, Villa looked like a good home game to have. Now, literally 2 weeks later, you wouldn't fancy playing Aston Villa because of how quickly things flip. So for all games now might look like really testing spells. Let's see how the picture looks when we get there.
We'll go through hit highs and lows so far and that in a sec. But just while you're talking about the back end of the year, what about January? What do you think they'll do in January?
I think they'll strengthen.
Significantly, like big money.
I think maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah.
I mean, they can't because then I think you run the risk of how on earth do you keep if you were going to add 4, 5, 6 more players? How on unless there are several departures as well? How on earth do you keep those happy? I mean, you're looking at like defense now. I think Gertrude's look good from the bench.
Yeah.
How do you start him?
I mean, that's my thinking of it. There's a handful of players, Gertrude, Mundell. We've not really seen Brobby, obviously, Traore. Yeah. I mean, if you're bringing in another 2 or 3 in January, then, I mean, listen, Lebris might decide in the next month or so, actually, Brobbey's not the player that I thought he was. Traore's not the one I actually want. Let's address that in January. Okay, fine. But if you're at a point where you're looking at those type of players and thinking, I still don't really think we've got a proper handle on them, I don't really think they've had a proper chance to show it, then I don't know, bringing a load of January signings on top of that feels like a stretch. I'm like, yeah, I think maybe one or two in very key areas that they see. And listen, there might be long-term injuries we get now. We'll have to see. But I don't know, I don't think there'll be a whole host of business as we sit here at the minute.
No. The one thing you would say about Lebris is, like, for we could sit here and say, well, we can't judge Brobbey yet because we haven't seen enough of him. Isidore's had a really good start to the Premier League season, and Mayenda has shown real signs in the first couple of weeks of the season that he's at home in the Premier League. But if Sunderland have the option to sign a centre forward who Lebris thinks is an upgrade on those three, he'll do it, won't he? That is the way. There's a real cold ruthlessness there, and I mean that as a compliment in a managerial sense with Lebris. So, and then the other thing, it's opportunities, isn't it? If someone get the opportunity to sign a player who they might not be able to sign 6 months down.
Well, that's the thing. I guess the one thing I would say is they will be operating, you would like to think, from a position of strength. So I guess what it gives you the opportunity to do is if you've got 2 or 3 long-term targets, development type signings, but of a level where you think they're ready for the Premier League, and Sunderland will have those absolutely in mind. We know the way they operate. They'll have what they want to do mapped out. Don't worry about that. Then maybe January gives you the chance to think, okay, well, we go in, we potentially put in an offer that works for us, and it's either accepted or it isn't. And if it isn't, fine, we walk away, we'll revisit in the summer. There's not the pressure to have to make signings, but there's the potential there maybe to say, well, okay, we really like this player. This might be the window to get them. We'll go in, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
And we were talking last week about AFCON after one of the pressers in the press room at the academy, and it has understandably been discussed a hell of a lot because Sunderland are going to lose 7 players potentially. But if you run through the team of who's left, it's still strong. Obviously, you've still got Roofs. You've still got 3 of probably the first choice back 4: Hume, Mokwele, Alderete, Ballard, obviously, Gertruda, who Lebris said last week can play left back. Sirkin's going to be back then. Obviously, you're losing Ronaldo, but you've got plenty of options there. It's the midfield, isn't it? Losing Tiara and Siddiqui. Jhaka, regular fare. Dan
Neil's going to have to start to get some more games, you would think.
He's going to have to, isn't he? And then the forward line, you've still got Isidore, Mayenda, Brobbey, Mundle's hopefully going to be back.
Yeah.
Then obviously there's a chance you lose Talby. So there are areas where Sunderland are going to lose key players. But I don't think the team is going to be completely decimated.
Oh no.
It's not hard to name a strong team that you'd fancy to win certain Premier League games.
Yeah, I completely agree. The panic when all of these African signings were coming in has undoubtedly abated quite a lot. I think you're right. Central midfield is the area. And then I guess all it does is it removes a layer of what's on the bench because that then is in the team. And all of a sudden, if you do get 2 or 3 injuries in that period as well, then it does become more difficult because you just haven't got that strength on the bench anymore. But you're only talking a 5 or 6 game kind of period, probably. We don't quite know yet exactly when the players are going to go, and obviously we don't know when they're going to be back because it depends on how their respective teams do. But you're probably only talking maximum, I would have said 5 or 6. So it does feel like Sunderland will be able to negotiate that.
And if you're Dan Neil, for example, coming in that midfield, how desperate is he going to be to take his chance? You're going to be, you would think, bringing someone in who's so hungry. And even, defensive, if it means Sirkin gets his chance at left back, that might be his first chance this season. That might be the chance for Mundle to get a run of games that he hasn't got. Like the players who are potentially going to be coming in are going to be really hungry, aren't they, to take that chance, which again, you would hope would play in Sunderland's favour.
Maybe. So let's rattle through a couple of bits before the end. Hit of the season so far, player-wise.
I think Jhaka, I've got to be honest, like when he signed, I thought like, wow, Granit Xhaka. But then on the flip side, I thought, with respect, how is it Sunderland have been able to sign him? Like, is he does he know that he's on the downward spiral? Is this like one last move? I think that's only inevitable when you sign a player at that stage of his career. I think he's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant. What about you?
I can't really argue with that, but just to be a little bit different, I'll go Roofs.
Roofs, yeah, that's the other one, isn't it?
Simply because I agree totally with what you say about Jhaka, but I think you always felt there was a certain level, a floor that Jhaka wouldn't drop below.
Yeah.
Roofs had the potential to be an absolute disaster. Bringing a young keeper, totally untried in the Premier League, potentially going to be under pressure from the word go. You're removing Anthony Patterson to do it. That had the potential to go quite badly wrong, and it's gone absolutely brilliantly right, to the extent where Roofs looks the most exciting young goalkeeper in the Premier League. Potentially, dare we start to see it across a big chunk of Europe. So, I'll go Roofs, but I also can't really argue with Jhaka. Miss? Yeah. I mean,
this feels like incredibly harsh, but purely on what we've seen so far, like Robbie, because we haven't seen anything of him yet. But I mean, that's not to say for 1 minute he's going to be a miss. We can't judge it. And Isidore's kept him out. So it's not a miss. But there's no. Where else do you go?
It's a hard one to go with, isn't it? Because you don't want to be harsh on these players at all, and for an awful lot of them, it's still incredibly early, and so there's a lot of caveats to what we're saying. Maybe a Dingra. Maybe he's one I thought would. I guess what you'd say that feels hard. What you'd say about him, I guess, is he hasn't really grasped and completely shone yet, has he? If you'd said to me at the start of the season, one of Talby or Adingra is going to pretty much play every game, and one's going to be a lot more in and out, I would have had them the other way around. I would have thought that Adingra would have been pretty much nailed on to start every game, given that he did have that Premier League experience, and Talby maybe. And for most of pre-season, Adingra probably looked better than Talby. Hasn't really turned out that way yet. Now, I'm definitely not writing him off. There's still shed loads of time. He's a really talented player, absolutely. But if you had to go for one, maybe him.
I think as well, when you're talking kind of hits, back to that, Lebris has to take immense credit as well, doesn't he, for his role in moulding this completely revamped, new look, overhauled squad together while stepping up to the Premier League.
Yeah,
plenty of those players haven't played there before. I think Lebris, but then on the flip side of that, I think one disappointment on a purely personal level, and again, this is why clearly that I do not have the ruthlessness that Lebris has shown. I think it's been impossible not to be disappointed for Dan Neil and how that has all played out since the summer.
Yeah, I agree. No, I completely agree with that. And obviously the injured lads. Dennis must be absolutely tearing his hair out. Agree with that. Moment of the season so far.
I wasn't. You did West Ham, didn't you, on the opening day?
Yeah.
I thought the second half at Forest, and just it's not a moment as such, but just getting over the line at Forest and winning in that way, and then celebrating in front of the away end. I thought that was significant. So I'll go with that. I think there's been better moments, but I haven't been there. You've been there for them. So.
Yeah, well, that's it. I mean, the pre-match ahead of West Ham was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. But I think it's got to be the moment when Mayenda hits the net and scores the opener. The player who obviously did so much at Wembley gets them up and running. I think that for me would be the moment, because in the end, Sunderland ran away with that game, but actually, when they scored the opener, the game was very much still in the balance. And, had West Ham won that game 1-0, who knows how different things might have been and what conversations we might be having now. It just was such a big, big moment, I think, to get everything up and running. And start to show that Sunderland are more than capable of mixing it at this level.
Here we go then to wrap up. And this isn't planned. Where as we sit here now, where will Sunderland finish this season?
Home to Chelsea.
I'll go 14th or 14th.
I had 12th, 13th.
Right.
In my head. So I think we're basically saying, aren't we, between 12th and 14th?
14th, yeah.
Which, listen, that would be great, wouldn't it? In terms of then giving them a real platform and foundation to build from going forward. That would, you definitely take that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course you would. Because like for all we were saying there about 17th does that, doesn't it? 17th. Yeah. You benefit financially, you strengthen the squad again, you're continuing your upwards trajectory. But 12th, 13th, 14th, the excitement there is if you were going to improve on that, you're in the top half of the Premier League. And then I know we're getting ahead of ourselves. Once you get in the top half of the Premier League, the inevitable next step is either winning a domestic cup competition or finishing in the top 7 and getting into Europe. And nobody at Sunderland will be getting ahead of themselves. But equally, we've seen over the last few years that there's a strategy there. There's a long-term strategy there, and they're not afraid to think big. They're not afraid to think out the box. It felt in May. It felt so exciting, didn't it? Everything surrounding Sunderland felt so exciting. Come the start of the season, because of all the signings, that felt like it had gone up a notch again. Yeah, I think it's gone up a notch again since then because of how Sunderland have played on the pitch.
And in many ways, this is probably a good way to wrap it up. That is probably the biggest achievement of everything, isn't it? That there hasn't been, as of yet, any drop-off in any way of, like you say, the excitement, the sense of positive momentum, the strength of the bond between fans, clubs, players, all of that. It feels like a journey that is absolutely going one way at the minute. And it's hugely exciting to be part of that now, That's not to say that journey won't have forks in the road and ups and downs and bumps and all of that. It will. We know it will. Potentially there's a few of them coming before the end of the year. We know what the fixture list is like. We know what's happening. But I think there's enough there now that still will not, diminish or abolish the positivity that has been built up and that is really fueling everything that's going on at Sunderland at the minute.
They better not lose at home to Wolves now.
I know. Wolves aren't going to lose every game this season, are they?
Let's not go there.
We will be properly doing this next week on the vid. Yeah. But listen, if you could if you said to Sunderland, what games you want first up after the international break, we'll have home to Wolves. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And especially with the way, again, I know we're going to talk about this last week, the way they drop more points on Sunday again. I don't think they're a million miles away, Wolves, but you can't, when you're in the position you're in, you just need to get points there in. You need to get points on the board, don't you? And we'll save that for next week.
Well, listen, thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. As I say, please do like, subscribe, leave us a comment, rate and review if you're podcasting. The offer on the Northern Echo website is going along the bottom there. £5 for 5 months, 40% for an annual subscription. That does get you kind of premium access on the website. Basically rips out a load of adverts. You get a fancy app that's a page turner for the printed products. You can have a look at all the rest of the Northern Echo. If you can support us, please do. It clearly is a massive help to us. But keep watching. We'll be back next week for some more We Are Sunderland, when we'll be previewing the Wolves game and talking about anything and everything that's happened over the international break. But hope you have a good rest of the week. Hope you have a good weekend. And see you soon for some more We Are Sunderland.